As I said, we're going to look at photographing plants specifically for identification and verification purposes. And Dean here is our training officer. Dean is going to talk us through. So, Dean, over to you.
Super, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Dean. So I'm going to start the presentation. Um, Hopefully this works now. Can you see that, Kim?
Yep, perfect.
Oh, and you can hear me loud and clear. Super. So yeah, this is going to be photographing plants for ID and verification, which feeds into the 100 plants in 2026 challenge. Um, so yeah, I'm going to get right into it really. This is what we're going to cover tonight, for about 45 minutes or so. Why are photographs important for plant recording? I'm going to show you some bad examples and some better examples, some good examples. Other aspects you might want to consider, and then just some general advice and resources. Um, so yeah, straight into it then. Why is it important to take decent photographs of plants for recording purposes? So you don't need to be a photographer. It's just taking a decent photo for verification. The first point is quite obvious. So for verification on iRecord, verifiers generally need to see the plant as a whole rather than small parts. You want to see the whole plant really. The second point is for tricky species or lookalikes. Now, as a beginner or a novice botanist, you might think that this is beyond you, but it's not really because certain plants can look similar from initial glance, but it means that you need to include pictures of the fruit, the stem hairs, or underside of the leaf, for example, which can seem daunting, but it helps, as the next point shows, with your own learning as well. So don't think that it's beyond you, and it ultimately it does help with your skills. For your own learning, so it makes you pay attention to the finer details of a plant, and helps you discover the intricacies of plant morphology, um, the nomenclature and the jargon that you hear botanists throwing around, which can seem a bit scary at the start. For the most part, it is logical once you get your head around it. The fourth point is for new discoveries. So again, you might think as a beginner, I'm never going to come across something new. But it has happened before and it continues to happen, because people take a photo of a plant and turns out that it could be new to their vice county, it could be new to the country. So you really do never know. And then the last reason is a bit of the application. So for informing conservation policy and biosecurity decisions. So for example, if you take a nice, decent photo of a known invasive plant species that hypothetically could feed into management action plans and protected sites. So two pictures, very random examples. You got giant hogweed, as you can probably recognize at the top. Um, as is a known invasive species, so you might find that in an area that had previously not been recorded. And then beautiful orchid underneath is Anacamptis pyramidalis, which is the pyramidal orchid, just to illustrate that you might come across this and it could be new to your vice county, for example. Okay, so into the detail then. So many flowering plants are highly identifiable from just a clear photo of either the vegetative or floral parts. So here's some four just kind of random examples that are of species that you can identify pretty readily from a nice clear photo. So you've Pinguiculus satanica, which is the pale butterwort. So if you're in the uplands in Ireland or Western Britain, you'll probably come across this, but it's quite a small plant. But if it's in flower, or even if it's not in flower over the winter, it's still very recognizable. You just want a nice photo of it. The second example you'd be much more familiar with, which is Hazel Corlys avellana. A verifier would be able to say that this is a hazel because you have a picture of the leaf and the bud, and the stem as well. So as a beginner, you might struggle. Is it a hazel? Is it a wych elm? But a verifier will know very quickly. Um, then you have Camarum palustre, which is a beautiful flower of boggy fens. The Marsh cinquefoil. Again, there's nothing else quite like it. So this is enough for verification. And similarly for the iris pseudochorus, the flag iris or yellow iris, very recognizable. So then some good and bad examples, and explain why I say bad with inverted commas. And these are photos by me, so I'm not insulting anyone. So this is a buttercup. Everyone's familiar with a buttercup. But there's quite a few variety species of buttercup, and there's two that you'll most likely come across. And if I just included that first photo, I think I was taking a picture of the insect. It's too zoomed in, really, and I need to picture as the first point that I made. You need a picture of the plant as a whole. So that includes the leaves, and you can see then the difference between the shape and the form of the leaf between Ranunculus repens, which is the creeping buttercup, and Ranunculus acris, which is the meadow buttercup. If you're a gardener, you'll definitely know these species very well. But really, it's just about zooming out. You don't have to have loads of detail all of the time. More bad examples. I'll just go through them really. So the first one, it's a fern, but really there's too much contrast. There's sun glare. It's too far away. The plant is twisted. If you were to just use that photo in and of itself, you're limiting the scope for a verifier to be able to ID that accurately, or to agree with your ID. So if I was verifying this, I would say it's a male fern, but I can't give you any more than that. Similarly, the second photo is the same but different in the sense that it's too little contrast, it's too dark, it doesn't show the whole plant, and it's a bit too artistic of a shot. So this isn't about taking nice artistic photos of plants, it's about taking um, you know, photos that are representative of the plant for botanical reasons rather than for artistic reasons. Again, you're limiting that to Dryopteris, a male fern. The third photo, I could upload this and say, okay, there's Dactylrhiza marsh orchids. I could say it's, you know, Dactylrhiza maculata, and it could be, but there are too many plants in one shot. It's too far away for most IDs to be confident. But, and this is why it's not necessarily bad, it is a really useful habitat photo. So you can include it as a suite of photos because a verifier can say, oh, that looks like a good habitat for X, Y, and Z. Um, the fourth photo is a bit too far away to determine at a species level. Um, I know this tree to be an oak, but I can't say for confidence if it's one of the two native oaks or the hybrid. So it's just too far away, really, to do it justice. And then finally, it's just too few characteristics of this flower if you use that just in and of itself. So you need other photos of leaves on your side of the flower, whichever. So some good examples then of botanical photos, and this is about important features. Now, this is something that you will just have to learn. It's a matter of practice. No one's born with this knowledge. You just have to acquire it through time. So I could upload this photo on the left of the fern, which is a lovely Dryopteris emula, hay center buckler fern. As you can see, I've included lovely, a nice array of features that are diagnostic for that species. A little bit more familiar would probably be on the right, which is the violet. And most people this time of year, especially, will take a picture of the violet face on because it's pretty. But really, it's good to turn it to the side and look at the spur, which is white in this case, and that points me in the direction of it being Viola riviniana, which is the common violet. So sometimes it just takes getting down and putting a little bit more effort into the photos that you take, and just take more photos than you need. Um, so then I'm going to show you three ideal submissions. That are kind of different from each other, just so that you know what you might want to include in a record submission. So I have come across this plant, and I'm going to say it's Angelica sylvestris, which is the wild Angelica. And these are the photos that I've included. And I've included a photo of the leaf morphology, which just means the shape of the leaf, the form of the leaf. The second photo is of the flower head, which is an umbel in this case, with some lovely pollinators on it. The third photo is a little bit dramatic. You don't really need this, but you might need it for other species. It's just a close-up image of the flower. And then the fourth photo, which people often forget, is a habitat photo, just for good measure. And then a verifier could say, yeah, I agree with this. This is Angelica sylvestris. And then it goes onto the map and onto the database. Second example then is something I see quite a bit, which is um, milkwort. So you might have come across this species before. Um, First image is a clear photo of the plant in flower, which is great, and that's usually as far as people go. But really, to get a firm ID on it, you need to look at the basal leaves, which just means the leaves at the bottom of the plant. And usually they're obscured by grass and other plants. But if they're oppositely arranged, which means they're coming out of the same point, as you can see, hopefully, um, that points me towards heath milkwort, Polygala stirpifolia. The confusion species would be Polygala vulgare, which is the common milkwort whose leaves are all alternate. So they're coming out at different positions. And then just habitat photos show that it is mostly found in heathland, but not exclusively. So these are just the things that you need to think about. Obviously, this is just a matter of practice, and it will come to you eventually. Uh, oh, okay. Conifers, so don't forget to record your conifers. They can be a little bit scary, but especially when we're looking at naturalized and non-native species, it's good to keep pay attention to them as well. So I think this is lodgepole pine, Pinus contorta, and I've included an image of the needles. How are those needles arranged? It's a pine, so it's going to be in a bundle, a vasicle. It's in pairs. There's two needles per vasicle here. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is I've included a picture of the buds, the apical buds, which just means the buds at the tip um, of the branch. Um, and then the third image, which you're not always going to have, but if there are cones, you want to take a picture of the cone because the spiky scale, see it's really sharp there, is diagnostic for lodgepole pine. So it's if it's there, you might as well include it in a record. So I'll go into more detail for each of these, but these are some of the key features for the plant groups. So this is probably what you want to know about, and what you want to take photographs of. So with flowering herbs, which is what you're most likely going to be recording, so that's your wildflowers really, you want to look at the flower itself, but the flower's not always there. Um, it helps obviously beginners. It helps with beginners if the flowers are there and looking at things from a more vegetative perspective, a little bit more advanced. Um, but it's good to take a few photos of the flowers from different angles as well. Dorsal and ventral, that just means dorsal means the top and the ventral means the underside. So it could be the underside of the leaf, for example, or the flower. You can look at the stem for different reasons. I'll go into more detail on this in a minute. An example is Cardamine hirsuta and flexiosa, which is a species, if you garden, you will definitely have come across these. Bittercress. Um, Really, you need to look at how many anthers, which are the male sexual parts of the flower, because one has four and one has more than four, usually six. But that's something that you need to actively look at. Broadleaf trees, again, you're probably going to be recording these as well. Leaf morphology, again, but what if it's winter time? This time of year, buds are starting to come out, but they're not fully out yet. So looking at the buds, winter tree ID is a whole thing. Fruit, if present, it's not always going to be present, but if the fruit is present, it's good to take a photograph. And then the overall habit, which is what form does the tree take? Is it upright? Is it, sprawling, so on and so forth. Um, and there's just an example there, but for the oaks, and how you might need the mature leaf and also the flower of the fruit. For conifers, as I said, needle shape and arrangement, fruit or cones if present, and the overall habit. So I'll look at yew trees in a minute. And ferns, because you can't forget about our ferns. often people take a picture just off the top of the fern frond, and that's as far as it goes, but it is good to have a dorsal and ventral underside view of the fern. And if there are any sori, which are the organs that contain the spores, which are on the underside of the fern, if they're present, that also helps with identification a lot of the time. And again, the overall habit. So it'd be the difference between a polypod fern and a hard fern. And again, I will show that to you in a minute. So for flowering herbs, which are wildflowers essentially, this is just an example. Two species that you will very likely come across. And they can look similar, um, but when you pay attention to the differences, it's quite obvious that they are quite different. So if you look at the what are the flowers shaped like? What's the form of the flower? That means that you might need to take a few photos of the angles of flower from above, from below, from the side. You don't always need to do that, but you, as I said before, you're better taking more than you necessarily need. You can always delete photographs. Leaf morphology, are the leaves, how are they arranged? Are they opposite or alternate? Is the color different from the top of the leaf versus the underside of the leaf? Um, what are the vein structures like? Are there hairs on the leaves? Are there color differences, as I said? And then the stem, a lot of species, the clincher of ID is in the stem. So the stem might have hairs, it might not have hairs. It might have hairs on opposite sides of the stem, and so on and so forth. It could have prickles, it could have different blotches and pigmentations, different colors. Um, so it's just to take notice of those things, because they might not necessarily help with that species, but they might help with species that look similar. So here's an example. Vaccia sepium or sativa, which is the bush vetch and the common vetch. We look at the sepal lengths, and sepals are just the um, the leafy structures that protect the flower as it develops. They vary in length in bush vetch. So you can see on the left, hopefully, how the dark purple sepals are upturns and they vary in length. On the right, you have common vetch, Vaccia sativa, and they're all straight and the same length. So you have this dichotomy between the two species. Now you can look at other features. You can see the flowers are quite different. The color of the flower can be a little bit different. But bear in mind that there are oddballs in botany, and nature doesn't always like to conform to textbooks or to keys. Um, so you can look at other things, but if they're both in flower, like for example, bush vetch has a huge flowering range from spring right through to winter almost. It's quite useful, and it is a species, two species that you will definitely come across. Broadleaf trees, then. Again, leaf and bud morphology. The buds are useful and required in winter, as I said. And if you can ID trees in the winter, you can ID them any time of the year. Flowers and fruit, if present, because they're not always present. But you look out for size, the shape, how they're attached onto the stem. Young stems can be useful because they can be hairy or glabrous. Glabrous just means not hairy. They could be warty in textures, or they could be a different color. Um, and then bark. Bark's a useful addition to add into records, but I wouldn't be using as a diagnostic feature in and of itself. It just helps. It wouldn't be the only thing that you would include in a record usually. So here's a tree that you've definitely come across. Is Betula pubescens, which is the downy birch. Very, very common and widespread. So I'm verifying birch trees. Someone uploads this photo onto iRecord, and I see that they've included a photo of the young stem, and I can see that it is indeed fuzzy and downy, hence the name. And obviously, you might notice that this isn't the same time of year, but it's just for illustration purposes. The I see a picture of the leaf and I see a picture of the bark, so I can be pretty sure that this is Betula pubescens, and I can agree with them. So you're just looking at these different features, and each tree, of course, will be different. It's just a matter of learning about them. Conifers, um, Needle arrangement is important. So are they in bundles like pine needles? Are they more 2D in shape? Are they more 3D in shape? Are they flat like yew tree is here, for example? Um, Reproductive structures. So what do the cones look like if they're present? Are there male flowers? Are there female flowers? So you have to do a bit of hooking about and trying to find these structures. Buds can be useful for distinction between similar species, and habit can also be useful. So, is it a spreading tree? Is it an upright tree? Does it trail along the ground? These features that you might want to pay attention to and take a photo of. So, for example, you have Taxus baccata, which is the yew tree, beautiful trees. Um, I've included a few photos here that you're not going to all find on the same tree because trees have separate male and female trees. But the first photo is of a male tree, so that's the male flowers. Nothing else quite like it, so you could probably include just that photo and it would be enough to get an ID. Second photo is of the fruit, which is called an aril, which is fleshy, looks like a berry, and has the seed in the center. So that's a female plant. And then a nice image of the needles. You could also do the underside of those as well. And then a picture of the tree from far back. What does the overall form of the tree look like? Um, Again, you don't really need all of these features, but you might as well get into the habit of including all of the features in your records. It's nice to do. So those are the things that you might want to look out for conifers, and definitely do pay attention to them. For ferns, can be a little bit scary, but I promise you can record a lot of ferns, and be confident in it. What you really need to look out for ferns is the the top of the frond and the bottom of the frond, so the dorsal and ventral sides. A lot of people just take a photo of like the first photo, for example, and that's it. But it's not hard to just flip the fern around and take a picture of it underneath as well. Because on the other side you will have the sori, which as I said are the reproductive structures, is where the spores are held. Um, and that could make the difference between being confused and being not confused. So here are two ferns. So you have the first two photos are a polypod fern, and the other two photos are of a hard fern. Two species you will definitely come across. Um, a beginner might think that they're similar, or yeah, I think that they're similar. But it's when you flip them over and you look at the spores or how the spores are arranged, um, the sori, should I say. As you can see in the polypod fur, they're rounded, um, they're little circles, little capsules. In contrast to the underside of the hard fern, which is the photo on the far right, they're linear, so they're arranged along the pinnae, completely and utterly different. So as a beginner, you want to look at those features and pay attention to those features. Um, so that's kind of the things that you might want to pay attention to in terms of the key features of each group. Um, this is just something you might want to consider is scale. Um, don't feel overwhelmed by scale. Um, but it is good to get into the habit of doing it. You don't need a ruler or a meter stick. It could literally be anything that is recognizable to a person, which is usually a body part. So it could be your hands or your arm. It could be your entire body standing beside a tree. Um, so yeah, it is a useful thing to get into, but or to include, but you don't need to think about it too much. But you might as well get into the habit of it. So I'll just spend the rest of the webinars on advice and tips, which is really, I suppose, what you're here for, is about how do you take decent photographs. Before I go into that, though, it really is important to stress that this is going to be dependent on the technology that you have, and people are going to have different phones and different cameras and things like that. So it demands you knowing what or how your particular phone works. But most modern phones are kind of similar in the mechanisms that they have and things like that. So the first thing is try and take in focus photographs, which isn't always easy when you are on the side of a river and try not to fall in, or it's a windy, rainy day. What you can do, as the photo shows, is you can place your hand, or it could be a clipboard, or it could be, you know, anything really that's solid behind the plant to help the camera focus. So essentially, the camera's focusing on my hand rather than the plant, and the plant just happens to be at the same depth of field. Um, your phone, like a modern smartphone, usually has a focus lock feature on the camera. So when you're taking a photo and you press the screen, usually there's a focus square and that helps focus, but sometimes that doesn't work. But if you do happen to get the plant in focus, if you hold it down, like I know an iPhone, if you hold it down for not even 2 seconds, it'll lock, which means that the focus will remain focused on the thing that you focused it on. And I think Samsung or Android phones are similar. Um, I think you hold it down as well. I'm not too certain, but that is something that can be useful because you might need your other hand to take a photo or to hold on to a branch or whatever it is, just to keep yourself safe. But you don't necessarily need to have that. You could use your hand, and as I said in the previous slide, you can use then that as a scale reference as well. Third point then, location. This is an important one. I know personally in my phone in my settings, if I take a photo, the location will be attached to that photo. Usually it's correct, sometimes it's completely off, but usually it's correct. Um, I think that depends on having signal though, so sometimes that doesn't work. Some people have that turned off on their phones. You just need to look at your settings. I find it useful, because if you're recording in the field, as the last point shows, you can add the records in the field, and then you definitely have the right location. If you take a photo of 50 plants or take 50 photos and then go home and record them or upload them after, they might then the location then might be set to your house. So you find 50 plants in your kitchen, which is probably unlikely. Um, so just have a look at that. And as I said, it is better to add the records in the field as you go, but everyone works differently, and that's okay. But an exact location obviously is something that you want to have. Yeah, so that's taking decent photographs and aspects of location. Some general advice and tips. Um, as you progress, it is worth getting a good hand lens. As a beginner, you might not want to get one or to feel like you need to get one. But if you're serious about botany, and as you should be, you might want to get a hand lens. They start at times 10 magnification. Um, you can get times 15, times 20, and even higher than that. But in the field, I wouldn't really ever have more than a times 20. And they are useful if you're going to look at finer details. And if you're serious about botany, you want to improve your botany, um, you will eventually need to get one. So you might as well start at the beginning or have it at the beginning, in my opinion. Um, there's all different brands and different price points. It's up to you what you're willing to buy. Second point, take note of the features needed to ID certain plants so you can look back on them. It is okay to upload photographs of plants and think that it's plant X, but it actually turns out it's plant Y. The old adage, you learn from your mistakes. That's perfectly fine. What I would do is take a mental note and then take a written note of the features that you missed. So if a verifier says it could be that species, but I need a picture of this and that. And then when you go back to that plant or you see that plant again, you know to include those features. So it's up to you and how you learn, but you might want to write things down, um, so that you have a note for the future. You can add additional photos to a record if features are seasonal. Yeah. So a lot of plants, for example, if you're really into um, crab apples and trying to find truly native wild crab apples, um, which isn't beginner friendly, but it might be something that you aspire to. Um, you might want a picture of buds, of the flower, of the leaves, and of the fruit, they're not all going to be together at the same time because there's, plant phenology. Um, that's fine. You can take a picture throughout the year, throughout the season, and add them back onto the record. But you just have to make sure that it is the same plant and the same location, um, which I know that you will definitely make sure of. But yeah, just to make sure that it is the same plant, for verification purposes, because then it might be confusing if there's different features or confusing features because it turns out it's two different plants. But something like a crabapple tree, um, is recognizable, and you definitely will know that it's the same plant. Um, yeah, this is actually the final slides. They're a little bit quick. Um, General resources. The BSBI website, of course, has a getting started web page, which talks about a lot what I talked about this evening, and more. So definitely go onto that and have a search about, for more detail on that as well. Um, that would be very useful. And then the second, these are both websites, mind. The second website that you might have come across is a website called Nature Spot, and it's it's run out of a certain English county, but I can't remember what county it is. So it doesn't have all species, but it does have, it's a great website overall, but it also typically includes the features needed for a confident ID with a lot of plants. And it also has like a light system. So it has like a green, amber, and red to show the difficulty level. So if something's red, then you need to make sure the ID is correct. And it usually has a checklist of the features that you might want to include, aka what photos you want to include in a record. Um, so that's Nature Spot. BSB website has loads of information, about how to get started and plant ID. And as Kim mentioned, there is the help on iRecord as well for, plant ID for the project. Um, so that actually brings me to the end. I flew through that. But yeah, if you've anyone's any questions, I'm not sure if
Thanks, Dean. Yeah, so we do have a few questions, and before we crack into those, I'm just going to share my own screen here and show you a few bits and pieces that we have open. So let me just share my screen. Dean, I might need you to stop sharing for me if you don't mind. And give me a wave if you can see that up on screen, Dean. So what we should have up on screen now, Dean, can you see the Padlet?
not yet.
Try again. Here we've got the Padlet. So this is all of the questions and answers to those questions from all of our previous webinars, and all of the questions from tonight will be added here and answered as well. So the website for this is in the chat there. So do take a copy of that, and then over the next few days, tonight's questions will be added there. And there's a whole range of other questions about how to take part, all the resources that are really useful to you, how to actually use iRecord, and then we'll add more about photographing plants and so on here. So do take that web address and hang on to it. It'll be really, really useful, and we'll keep adding to that throughout the 100 Plants in 2026 challenge, okay? The other site I just want to flick over to show how well we're doing so far is the actual iRecord dashboard, which I should have looked at the start, so sorry for that. So when you log into your account on iRecord on your computer, you can actually go into activities and look at your activity summary, and it will show you how everybody's doing in the challenge so far. Now you can see here, I'll just zoom in here to where we are. You can see all of the records that have been made so far in the challenge. So we've got 4,812 records already. Those have been submitted by 410 recorders. We have 6,653 photos. So that's at least one photo per plant that's been photographed, and a whopping 471 species so far have been captured, which is absolutely amazing considering we're only just at the very start of the season. This is absolutely phenomenal. So you can also click onto the species there if you want to get an idea of what species have been recorded. And you can see right now, and this makes a lot of sense if you've been out, you'll have seen the Lesser celandine is flowering all over the place at the moment. So it's no surprise that is the top flower, 208 records, which is fantastic. So for those of you who, like myself, really only use iRecord on your phone, do make sure occasionally that you log into the website and have a quick look at how everybody's getting on there. It can get a little bit competitive, maybe, but it's lovely to see. And this will also give you a good clue as to what is actually being captured, maybe give you some hints of what you might go out and find. Another web page here is our main 100 Plants in 2026 challenge. So again, I'll pop the links for these in the chat as we're answering questions. So do use the web page. It links you off to, so you can see their recording guidance, iRecord, lots of resources on how to get started with Plant ID, and links to all of the webinars. If you haven't registered yet, which hopefully you have because you're here tonight, but just if you haven't, there's a registration page there with loads of information on it and the links to everything. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing there for a wee second and let's have a look at some of those questions. So first question, why do we need to attach photos? So I guess, Dean, you really did kind of answer this, but attaching photos really is so important. It's not just that you know what it is, it's so that somebody who hasn't seen that plant in person, that could be on the other side of the country, can look at that and say, yes, that's absolutely what it is. And that record then can be used for all sorts of scientific research or helping define policies, helping us look at, plant phenology and what's flowering when, and are there any trends that are changing and so on. But also, as Dean's kind of explained this evening, really important for you to get your eye in on these plants and learn. You see so much more when you're looking at it in such detail that you start seeing the differences between two different plants that might be quite close in appearance. So really important that you do take those pictures. Dean, do you have anything else on attaching photos you'd like to
Yeah,
say?
it really helps with verification.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a beginner and maybe you're new to it. A verifier might not know your name and they might not be able to say, oh, I know this person definitely knows what the species is based on written notes. Not to undermine you, but it's just to make sure that records are the
Yeah.
plants are what the plants are, the suggestion is. It just makes things more objective
Yeah.
and scientific.
Another question we've had is, can we add the photos later? And yes, Dean, you did touch on this. You can absolutely add photos later, but what I would say is you can't add a photo later on if you didn't take it while you're out at the plant. So that's really, really important that you take as many pictures as you can while you're there of, like we were talking about, the front, the back of the flower, the leaf, the underside of the leaf, the stem. Step back and take a picture so that you've got the whole plant in and potentially the habitat that it's growing in, which can really help eliminate certain lookalike plants that wouldn't be found in that type of environment. So that's why taking a habitat photo as well can be really, really important. It helps the verifier say, yes, we know it's not this, even though it looks quite similar, we know it's not this because we can see in the background we're in this location, not that. So that's really important. The other thing I would say with the iRecord is fantastic. You don't have to finish the entry there and then. So you can look at the plant, create an entry, start to fill in the details of it, fill in the location of it. You can add pictures. But you don't have to submit it. You don't have to upload it right then. So what you can do then is have that record pending. And then when you get back home, it's already kind of tagged to the location and the details that you've got at the site. Then you can kind of fish through your pictures and say, yes, this is the one I want to, or this one happened to focus on the background. I don't want to use that one after all. And you can change it. And only when you're happy with it, then you can upload it. So you don't need to upload there and then. You can create the record and make sure the location has been set properly and add as much detail as you want to, and then upload it when you've checked it back at the house. Would you say that's fair enough, Dean?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So sorry, I'm just fishing through some of the other questions that we had here. So this is an interesting one. Can I move other plants and things that might be in the way to get a better picture? So that's a good one. It's very easy to get into gardening, but we do need to be mindful that we don't want to disrupt or affect other plants that are growing there. So you don't want to start pulling out other plants just to make sure you get a clean shot. How would you approach that, Dean, if you have plants that are in the way?
Yeah, maybe I give him a gentle nudge out of the way. But I wouldn't be operating anything. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's, if it's dead winter growth of grass, I wouldn't be particular about it, but I wouldn't be removing other wildflowers to take a picture of an orchid. You just
Yeah.
move them out of the way as much as possible. Yeah.
Yes, maybe just hold them down or just pull them slightly to the side, but make sure that they can go back. So that's a good call. Um, and obviously we try to leave wildflowers in the ground where we can. So we don't, if possible, please don't pick the flower to take a better picture of it. We want to leave them growing as much as possible. So sorry, another question. Can we add more photos later on? Yeah, absolutely. We just covered that one. So you can, provided you haven't uploaded your record, you can add more photos to it on the app on your phone itself. If you have already uploaded it, you can log into the desktop version on your computer, and then you can just attach more information to it there. You can also, if you've decided that your record was wrong, you can delete it on the website as well after it's been uploaded, or just any of the other information on it that you need to. So here's a question. How close should I get to the plant when I'm taking pictures? Do you want to take that one, Dean?
How close? Um, as I said in the presentation, it really depends on what the plant is, but it's good to get the plant as a whole and then some of the finer details. So if it's a tree, you might want to take 20 meters back and take a picture of the tree as a whole if you can. Um, but yeah, you close, but not, you don't want to be completely zoomed in on a feature that's completely useless because it might be really blurry, and not actually showing that much. So it really depends on the species, but a nice clear photo up close, and then maybe something like a habitat photo, which is further away, is ideal.
That's great. Thank you. Um, So the next question we have is from Luke. Are there any plants you don't want photos of, like very common things that are everywhere? So to this one, this is obviously much discussed, but I would say you are looking for 100 plant challenge. This is the 100 plants that you find and that you learn how to identify. So I would say to you, submit whatever you find. We are looking for wildflowers. So we don't want to take pictures of garden plants that somebody has planted. Uh, Unless you can tell that that plant has actually escaped the garden and self-seeded or is growing somewhere itself, and that's naturalized outside of the garden environment. But as beautiful as they are, we don't want lots of pictures of your begonias or whatever in your garden. But 100%, your 100 wildflowers, and that includes the trees as well, do take those. Who's to say in 50 or 100 years that knowing how many daisies were out there isn't just as important as knowing what super rare flowers we have right now. So submit your records, find it, but make sure the pictures are there and do your best to identify them yourself. I think that's the most important thing. You'll learn how to identify flowers with those really common things that you get an opportunity to look at in detail every day. And so that's really, really important for you to practice on those. So absolutely, your first 100 species that you find, work away, take those pictures. We really want to see them. This is a question I'm going to ask myself because I really struggle with this, and I'm sure some of you do. When you're getting down to take a picture of the flower or the plant, whatever you might be, you probably have your rucksack on your back, you've got a phone with a case on it with a flap that wobbles backwards and forwards and covers the camera lens just as you're about to hit click. So how do you manage everything you're trying to do? And the first thing I would say there is put down all of your stuff. take the bag off your back, because as soon as you bend down to take that picture, you can guarantee your rucksack will fall over your head and probably clobber the plant you're trying to take a picture of. So put your stuff down safely, that it's not in the way of anybody, it's not going to trip over, and ideally that it's not going to squash another plant that you want to take a picture of in a few minutes. Then I would say make sure that you either have your phone held in a way that nothing's going to flop in front of it, like the case, or take it out of the case if that's more appropriate. Some of the phones these days are really quite big, so you do need, a steady grip of it so that it doesn't tremor just as you press the button to take the photo. That can add a little wobble in, and that's how I personally seem to get so many blurry pictures. So, do look at what you're doing. If you need to put the bag down, if you need to take it out of its case, do whatever's needed, that you don't have things getting in the way of the lens just at that crucial moment, okay? Anything else, Dean, that I've forgotten on that kind of general area?
No, yeah, it's just a bit of common sense. If you think you're going to be recording a lot of plants in one area, just put everything down out of the way. Um, Frees up your back and makes you more flexible and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's have a look at these questions. Oh yeah, why do you need a hand lens if you've got a zoom on your camera? So that's a really good question, and that's, I suppose, one thing. Taking photographs of the plants is not the same as you getting a good look at certain features. So you may not at the start need a hand lens to look at it, and you'll certainly struggle. It's quite a challenge sometimes trying to take a picture through your hand lens to get the zoom in on those focuses. So generally for your photographs, you don't need the hand lens to take the photograph. Your camera phone will absolutely be fine for that. We'll cover in next week's talk a little bit about the equipment that you might want to use when you're going out recording, and a hand lens is that because it helps you really clearly see features of the flower, but you don't need a hand lens in order to take a picture of it. So just so that's clear, okay? Now, so one for you here, Dean. Can you go through recording abundance again? Do the numbers refer to how many in a square or meter? So I think this is actually a recording question as opposed to a photography question, is it? Or
Yeah.
yeah, we might cover that in a little while, or on another session, Trish. So we'll come back to that one if that's okay, because this is specifically about photographs. And Martin, similar to that, will we cover botanical keys? So you've just gotten started with photographing key differences. So I will check now if we're doing anything specifically about keys. Didn't see anything on the list, but look, we will look at that and we will kind of cover next week. We'll have a quick look at the botanical keys and how they work, okay? What I would say is botanical keys are quite useful if you're learning what parts of the flower to photograph, because they kind of give you a clue of, is it hairy or non-hairy? So then well, I should take a picture of whether there's hairs or not, because that's obviously an important characteristic. Or if it says for the violet, the spur is dark purple or whatever, then you have a clue that you need to take a picture of the spur at the back of the flower. So I'll come back to you on the Padlet about those two questions. Next question, Emma. If fine details aren't clear on the photos, but you've seen them on the plant, would written notes be accepted to support the ID?
You can always add them in. That's fine. There's usually a note box for notes. Because some features are very hard to take a photograph of. I appreciate that. So yes, it does help, but if you can manage to get a photo of it, that's better, even if it is a bit blurry. But it does no harm there's no harm in putting into the notes section that you observed, ABC, and that helps with the identification. So yeah, there's no harm in doing it, but photographs are better, I suppose. But sometimes you just can't get photographs.
Yeah, or if you tried to take a picture of something and when you got home you realized it was blurry, you could attach the blurry picture and then, as Dean says,
Yeah.
On it, just add that note that you tried to take a picture of the hairs that were, and describe what they looked like, or describe what your picture was trying to take. Okay. Do you have examples of plants that we definitely should not touch because they're dangerous? So, for
Yeah,
example, giant hogweed.
yeah. Obviously, you don't want to touch giant hogweed. I mean, it is just be cautious with touching any plant really, because you can't take skin reactions and stuff to plant sap. Um, if you think it looks a bit nasty, maybe just don't touch it. You just take photographs, in situ, and maybe not try to touch the plant. Um, if you think that you have sensitive skin, or you're sensitive to organic material, maybe don't touch the plant, especially if it's in the Umbellifer family, which do contain those phytotoxins
Mhm.
that make giant hogweed so notorious. So obviously err on the side of caution. But yeah, it is something, maybe a list of species to not touch might be a good thing to have, maybe on for the BSBI to do. I don't know if they have it.
Yeah, well, we can have a look at that for sure. And I think it's really important then that we're working on our identification ourselves as well. We're not just going to rely on the pictures that we upload to iRecord and allowing iRecord to work out what the plant was. It's really useful for you to sit and look at the flower or the plant without necessarily touching it. See if you can work out the ID yourself using your guidebooks or your key or whatever resource you're using, and then you should have a good idea. Yes, it is a giant hogweed, or maybe it's one of the other hogweeds that are related but aren't as toxic, aren't toxic, that they might not cause a burn on your skin as soon as you touch them. But I mean, you always need to be careful with plants. You can hurt yourself just as badly by grabbing a bramble as you might do snapping a hogweed in half. So let's just be careful. Do try an idea at first so that you can get an idea of this is something I don't particularly want to touch. And then when you're taking your pictures, you know to do it with care. So you don't need to hold the plant in order to take the pictures. Maybe you can use something else like a clipboard to move it into position or whatever it may be. Okay, so just stay safe. Um, so let's just have a look. My camera has a microscopic setting. Is that okay to use? I mean, I would absolutely use the tools that are available and what you have for sure. If your camera has that feature, use it. And like we said earlier on, just start your record at the site, and you can always, when you're home, then look at the photos, make sure it's got the quality you want, and attach them to the record that you started. Have you used something else there, Dean, for that one?
No, yeah, that's it. Really, if you have it, you might as well use it. It's hard to know how useful all
Yeah,
these technologies are, but just give it a
yeah.
go, see if it works.
I would say, and I'm looking at, there's a few people that have mentioned this particular camera in the Q&A section, the Olympus Tough cameras, and I have one myself. Now, if any of you can tell me how not to get the tremble when I press the shutter on it, I would really appreciate that, because all of my photos seem to have a little blur, so I'm obviously doing something wrong. But look, it's just using the tools that you have. And practicing with them and taking more pictures than you need, because you can always delete them afterwards. That's the joy of having digital cameras and phone cameras these days, is you're not paying per print. So I just want to check if there's any other photographic questions that we have tonight. If not, we'll finish up there. Uh, does everybody have the link for the Padlet? I'll put it in the chat again, just so that everybody has it there. And that's where any questions we haven't come to, like, for example, we'll check about the botanical keys, and we'll check about the abundance again there, so that can be covered in a future session. And Trish, with the recording abundance, if that was covered on a previous webinar, pop onto YouTube and watch the webinars back, because they are all there. So just go to YouTube and look for the BSBI's channel, and you can watch all of the videos then. Okay. So thank you everybody for coming along tonight. We hope that was useful. It's just a taste to kind of get started in taking photos of your plants, but we are thrilled that you're all taking part in this challenge, and we're really looking forward to following everyone's journeys through this. So do make sure you get submitting your records if you haven't already. Next week, Dean and myself will be back, and we will be looking at getting started with Plant ID. So for those of you right at the start of your plant ID journey, if you don't know where to begin, we'll look at the basics. We'll look at some of the books and guides, the online resources, and the equipment that you might need to go out recording. Just a little toolkit that will help you when your journey to learning how to ID common species in your local area. Okay, so hopefully we'll see a lot of you next week. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.